Bootstrapping is something that we don't talk about very often, but it is also very beneficial because it gives you an opportunity to really figure out and create productive ways to generate revenue in your business,
Mhm.
which is super important, especially if you're getting grants.
Mhm.
Just because you're getting grants doesn't mean that you need to not make money in your business another way.
Absolutely.
At some point, the grant cycle is going to end and your money's going to stop.
Mhm.
If you do not bootstrap at some point or figure out how to generate revenue in your business, chances are when the funding stops, your business also stops or slows
Mhm.
down extremely.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Okwera Podcast, aka T.O.P, where we're elevating you to the top. I'm your host, Justina Kanza. We've got some exciting guests for you today. Hope you stick around to the end and catch you soon. A few months ago, I hosted a grant writing workshop and I got so many questions from folks asking, how do I apply for grants? Where do I find them? What criteria do funders look for? And so many other questions. And so I figured we need to bring on an expert who's been writing grants and who's been supporting the community acquire funding for years. And so today I'm excited to have for today's episode, Jillisa Brown. Hi, Jillisa.
Hi, Justina. Thanks
Thank,
for having me.
thank you for coming. I usually read a bio, but sometimes I just like to let you introduce yourself, share a little bit more about the work you do with funding impact in social finance and social innovation.
Sure. So my name is Jillisa Brown. I am the daughter of Grace Brown, who is the daughter of Delcina Mitu, who is the daughter to Maud Dennis, who's the daughter to Amanda Smelly. And I carry my mothers and great grandmothers, in all of the things that I do. And so
Absolutely.
just want to acknowledge my ancestors as we begin today.
Absolutely.
I have been in the social finance world for the past 7 years across Canada and in the global space as well. I've had the opportunity to run a couple of community of practices within this space where we brought together several social finance fund managers and really had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about impact investing across Canada and the globe. But before that, I've always been somebody in the ecosystem that has supported entrepreneurs with everything to do with business development and getting grants. I really love to take my experiences, my personal and work experiences, and really share whatever it is that the community needs from me. So, it's a pleasure to be able to share a little bit more with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julissa. And thank you for bringing your ancestors with you today.
Yes.
We're carrying them on our backs, or they're carrying us on their backs, really. So
Mhm.
thank you for acknowledging them. So Julissa and I actually met about 5 years ago, even though she doesn't remember. She hosted an event for House of Nine, the sorority platform supporting Black women around building entrepreneurial spaces, building entrepreneurial ventures and community in general. She's the perfect person to talk to us about community, about funding and entrepreneurship in general. And so when it comes to the grant landscape, Jillisa, tell us a little bit more about what that looks like, what grants are available to entrepreneurs in Canada, whether it's folks, in the nonprofit space, it's folks in business, folks in tech. What does the landscape look like generally?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different types of funding available. But when we're specifically talking about grants, there are grants for profit businesses, there are grants for nonprofit businesses. And then what we're seeing a lot more in Canada is the term social enterprise being used. And so I've learned over the years that sometimes we, like as people of color, will disqualify ourselves in this social enterprise box because we just don't know what it is. And so a social enterprise is basically finding ways to repurpose the profit made into your business to create social or environmental impact within your communities. Understanding those terms really helps you identify yourself in the space and apply for these types of grants. But as I said, generally there are grants for profit, there are grants for nonprofit. A lot of the times we believe that there is only funding available for nonprofit organizations. But I think it is that way because a lot of the times foundations or the folks that are providing grants typically put grants into nonprofit businesses because they'll be recognized as a non-qualified donee. In other words, the foundation will be able to write it off or do what they need to do behind the scenes to make it work for their foundation.
Taxes and stuff.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. But, I think that there are grants available within every sector, whether you're in health, whether you have a tech business, whether you are a hairstylist. Like, I think that there's so many different ways that we can achieve grants. It really just comes down to the stories and narratives you're telling about your business and the impact you're creating.
Absolutely. You make such a great point, because when I'm thinking of like selling to customers, what you're selling is essentially the product and the service and the solution and the benefit of it. But when you're selling in terms of acquiring grants to funders, what you're selling is impact, and impact comes a lot from storytelling. So I really like that. But I figure we start first and foremost by describing and defining what a grant is, in case people don't know what it is. How does it differ from other forms of funding?
Okay, so a grant is basically a non-repayable, let's call it an investment in your business. It is non-repayable. So whatever funds that they give you, let's say a funder has a mission to support more women. They would provide a grant to support your mission and goals, also supporting women. And at the end of the day, you're really not paying that back. I guess the payment, in a sense, would be the impacts that you're creating. Another term we might hear is non-dilutive funding. Non-dilutive funding is the type of investment where you're also not losing equity in your business.
Absolutely. What comes to mind for me is that impact is a form of equity when it comes to the nonprofit and generally the grant space. But let's go back to understanding the process. Now that people know what a grant is, now that businesses know that it's not just reserved for nonprofits, even for-profit businesses can access these non-repayable forms of funding. What does the process look like? Where do people look? Just the whole from A to Z. What is the process looking like there?
It definitely feels like a hard and long process for a lot of us. And let's be real, it does take time and energy, but starting right at the top, looking for grants is not as hard as it may seem. Doing a simple Google search saying grants in Canada, but also adding what sector you're in helps. So if I'm trying to support youth or build youth programs in Canada, I might say grants in Canada for youth 2025. So it really comes down to adding your niche to whatever sort of grants that you're looking for. Another great way is to find the foundations and big organizations that are also aligned with your mission or are within your sector, because subscribing to their newsletters or just really paying attention to the ways that they distribute money within communities would give you a little bit of an inside look into gaining access to their grant portals or opportunities. After you find the grant, you have to look at a few things, including eligibility, right? Like, am I eligible for this grant?
Because it's such a daunting process. The last thing you want to do is go through the whole application process when you just don't align with the basic eligibility criteria.
Exactly. So I would definitely look and see, is this grant deadline still open? Does this grant work for the type of incorporation I have? As we said, sometimes you have to be a nonprofit organization to qualify for a grant. So if I'm a for-profit, I might just stop there. Or I might find a nonprofit organization that I can collaborate with in order to make things work for me as well. So you look at that eligibility, see if you qualify to apply for this grant. Are you in the right city or country? And then I might think, okay, what is the true alignment between my business and the funder? And really look at the alignment with not just the grant application that they're particularly asking for, but also the foundation in general. What are the ways that we're aligned? Then I would think about what sort of project or initiative am I going to come up with to actually apply for this grant, because a lot of grants are project based. And so you would have to come up with a project or initiative that, again, is aligned. Come up with a story that you're able to articulate to the funder to say, hey, here are the ways that we're aligned. Here are the ways that I'm meeting the needs of my community. You can talk about the different types of impact that you're looking to create. Budget is a
It's
big
a
part of
big
this.
thing. It's the most daunting for me when I'm applying for grants. I hate the
Listen.
budget and the work plan. I can do the overview and the objectives and everything else, but that's where the meat lies and the budget piece,
Exactly.
because it's very detailed.
Exactly. And I think this is one of the biggest things that the funders look at. I've also sat on grant review committees. When I'm reviewing a grant, the biggest things that I look for, within the questions is, what need is being solved?
Okay.
How are you solving it? And then I look at the budget. Okay, is this really feasible?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we'll find ourselves applying for a grant where the maximum is 100,000, but maybe your project doesn't really need $100,000. It's okay to ask for less than
For less than the
maximum.
maximum. I should really keep note of that one. Because
But
you
it's
see
still
the
okay.
$2 million, you're like, I would like the $2 million.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's okay also if you're able to justify these things
Yes.
and make it
Justification.
make sense for the funder.
Mm-hmm.
Within this process, you'll also come up with the outcomes and even get into the ways that you will evaluate the impact you're creating through the project. Then, once this process continues and you're selected for the grant, this is where the real work begins.
Yeah.
In actually delivering on the things that you've promised. I think that is super important to uphold the integrity of you and your business to ensure that you're delivering on, what it is that you're saying you're going to do with this
Absolutely.
grant. Is super important. Then comes evaluation and reporting. It does feel like a lot of elements, but when you break them down into pieces, it is doable. A lot of people are successful with getting grants.
Absolutely. Thank you for breaking down that process for us. When you put it that way, it does sound a little bit more streamlined, a bit more manageable. So we're starting with researching what grants are available, and this can be from as easy as a Google search. But I also wanted to ask is there any other tools that you've used in the past for grant search? Because I know there's like one like Happily AI is one that I've used in the past, but are there any like AI or like tech tools that curate different grants available across the country and then also categorize them based on different industries, etc.?
There are a few grant databases
Yes.
floating around, and Happily is definitely one of them. Through Funding Impact, we have a grant database that stays active. We update it every month. And so, on our Funding Impact Community Hub, you'll be able to get access to a lot of grants. We're also starting to open other types of investment opportunities, not just grants. None of them incorporate AI. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to build out.
Yeah, so the best bet, guys, is fundingimpact.ca, is it?
Yeah.
And that's Jillisa's platform where they're curating different grant opportunities and other investment opportunities across the country. In addition to that, you actually do consulting and grant writing itself. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that? Because I know like I need to outsource some of these services. I'm by no means an expert. And as you mentioned, it can be overwhelming. So having an expert hold your hand goes a long way.
Absolutely. So Funding Impact is really a space where we're focused on supporting BIPOC entrepreneurs with investment readiness and impact measurement. But within that investment readiness bubble comes grants. We actually have a grant writing workshop coming up where we'll be teaching all the things you need to know about writing grant proposals, as well as project planning, because both of them are so connected. Within the Funding Impact community, we also have something called the Grant Ready Success Kit. This kit is an opportunity for you to bring together the most commonly asked things regarding grants. So, when you apply for grant, they're going to ask you for your business number. They're going to ask you questions about your board. If there's a project that you are raising grants for, you're able to fill out the common application form and say, okay, each grant is going to ask me about my needs. It's going to ask me about my solution. It's going to ask me about, my outcomes. Being able to bring all these things together gives you the chance to build upon what you already have rather than feeling the need to start from scratch for every single grant that you apply for.
That's very important because they can be time consuming as well. So just having a kit ready and you edit whatever needs to be changed. It's like having a master resume for all your job applications.
Exactly.
I like that.
But in addition to that, as you said, not everybody has the time to write a grant on their own. So we are building a grant writing agency. We do have a few grant writers on board
That's
already,
beautiful.
where folks who just don't have the time or the capacity to do it themselves can work with us for that help.
That's beautiful. I'm going to be soliciting you guys sometime soon because it's peak grant writing season. And so, yeah, it gets overwhelming. But you mentioned a little bit about the Grant Ready Success Kit, which just essentially makes sure you have everything that you need to submit applications. But you also mentioned aligning your application to different funders' objectives, essentially. So, what are the community needs you're solving for? What's the feasibility from your work plan and budget? But also, what are the outcomes and evaluations, etc. Could you walk us through some of the key criteria that funders look at in addition to these things you've mentioned?
Yeah, so I'd say key criteria that funders are looking for definitely would have to do with like what is the need that you're solving. Great things to add along with your lived experience. It's really great to include data. So, what statistics are out there that can really back up what it is that you're sharing. If you know that Black entrepreneurs are having trouble with funding, letting the ecosystem understand that it's actually 0.01% of funding that is going to support Black women, the funder can look at that and say, okay, there's actually data to back this up and truly
Absolutely.
understand the need. The other thing, in addition to what I've shared, would include the work plan. So maybe you can say from month 1 to month 3, these are the things that were the activities that we'll have, and here are going to be the outcomes that we're able to produce. I'd say lately too, actually sharing an in-depth plan for evaluation and impact measurement is becoming more important because at the end you want to be able to show that you're able to deliver and build impact. And so the way that you do that would be to pull together a plan to say, okay, at the beginning, middle, and end, we're going to have surveys or we'll have focus group that will be able
Interesting.
to help us hear from our communities. Or, we're going to reassess and see what our analytics are looking like and, understand that, okay, let's say, for example, you're creating a youth program to help youth with, I don't know, weight challenges. And so a part of you doing that would say, okay, you know what, the way we're going to evaluate that is to say, the youth, we're finding that the youth that are coming to our program are also eating healthier. We noticed that the lunches that they're packing to bring to school are healthier because this is something that we've taught them in the program. And so of 10 students, we noticed that 7 of them are packing healthier lunches and sharing stories about how they feel better about their body image. That's a way to let the funder know that you're evaluating the impact you're creating.
I really like that. And I think for me, with grant writing, the work plan, the budget, everything, I would kind of nail it, but I fell short a lot on the evaluation and impact measurement. So that's good to know. Can you share a little bit more about the value of storytelling, especially as part of evaluation, like documenting the process, content creation and things like that? Does that really have any value on the impact side?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it really gives you the opportunity to let the funder know that you're really out there doing the work. I think the fear of a funder could be that you're just making it up.
Yes.
However, if you're able to show proof, like, instead of saying, we serve entrepreneurs across Canada, you could say something like, we have served 300 entrepreneurs in this, and this province, or being able to show proof, photos, videos that you've captured everybody in the same place, learning. I think that being able to tell the story really brings things to the next level. It's the difference between saying, we're helping youth with education. It's completely different than saying, in the Jane and Finch community, we recognize that many youth are having issues with their test scores. We also recognize that because of the impact of the community they live in, they might have less help with access to tutors. Because we have created this Big Sis, Little Sis program, not only are they getting connected to a mentor in the space, but they're also getting one-on-one connections and opportunities to really understand what it is that they're learning in the classroom. I think the way to get the funder is to make them feel something at the end of the day.
Yes.
How can you
Yes.
allow the person reading your application or proposal to feel what it is that you're feeling? We forget that it's humans that are reading these.
Absolutely.
If I'm able to pull on someone's heartstrings or make somebody really think about how important my solution is, that's where we get the movements.
So be as detailed as possible about the geography and demographic is usually one that I think I see some people miss out on, like community need. If there's any existing research, what does it say about that? If you're talking of Black unemployment in Canada, what does Statistics Canada, for example, say about Black unemployment? I think that's a good one. And then in terms of other criteria, how about on the team side and also partnership side? What are they looking for there? Are they looking for a specific profile of what the leadership and execution operations team would look like? Are they looking for organizations that already have existing community partnerships, etc.?
Those are great things to add because you're letting them know what skills you have to ensure this can be done well. And so, if you're sharing as the lead, you're able to share your bio and experience to say, yes, I've done this before. I've worked with this set of people and this was the outcome. And it really gives you an opportunity to evaluate, okay, who do I really have on my team to make sure that I'm really making things happen to the best of our ability. Another great thing for nonprofits would be to talk about who's on your board. If I'm able to show these are my board members and I'm able to lead on them as an advisory council when we're having issues or trying to ideate about what are the best ways to solve the problem. It's really great talking about who these people are and their expertise and experience as well and what they're able to bring to the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, a quick question. For folks that like they're just individuals, they've never really run a business, they've never received a grant before, but they're just looking for grants to get started. Because sometimes for folks that have been doing it for a while, their proof of concept is already there. They have traction to show for it. They've done this before. But for folks who haven't done it before, how are they structuring the applications differently to give themselves a little bit of an edge there?
For those that are
Brand new to the game, yes.
I would really lean heavily on the research element and really speak to the need. I think that even if this is your first time, you have solved this problem in one way or the other before. And so definitely sharing every detail about the experiences that you do have, the impact that you have created. But, this could be the opportunity for you to bring in partnerships, as we were saying, like partnering with another organization that might have just that extra layer of experience definitely could bring you in some more of that backing that's required. And I think the funder also sees you collaborating or partnering with others as a sign to tell them like, hey, we see that they're able to work with others. So if they can work with their partners, they'll be able to work well with us. And so, yeah, I definitely think leading on those type of partnerships with those that do have the experience that you can also use as an advisory are awesome. For us at House of Nine, we were able to partner with the Canadian Women's Foundation to apply for Canadian government funding. If we had gone to do that on our own, we might not have the reputation yet to convince the government that we'd be able to do what it is that we're saying. But because we built that partnership, that relationship, it definitely gave us the one up.
Absolutely. It's a credibility piece that the funders look at to say, you're new in the game, but if you can convince Canadian Women's Foundation to partner with you, then they see something in you and we're going to come on board. But then how do you get those partnerships, especially when you're very early on?
I'd say it's all about relationship building. Who are you building relationships with and why? How aligned is your organization to the foundation or whoever you're looking to build relationships with? And I'd say start small, start slow. You don't have to think you can meet someone today and by next week we're already talking money. I think that it's important to show up in meetings and networking environments and really just try to get to know people. I think we really rush the process a lot. And when we have the opportunity to slow down and learn about individuals, understand what their passions are, then the next time we meet, not only am I able to continue to share what I've been working on in my progress, but I can say, oh yeah, I remember you also had this passion. Like, what do you think about that? I've shared my initiative with you. From your perspective, what are the gaps? How does the foundation believe this problem can be solved? And how can we do it together? As you start having more of these conversations, not only will you be able to build a plan hand in hand, but it also lets the person or the foundation really see, okay, you know what? When there's an opportunity that might not be open to the public, I'm going to remember this person and the work that they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And they get to mention you in rooms of opportunities. They sponsor and advocate for you, but it takes time because they're also putting their reputation on the line, as in the case of Canadian Women's Foundation, because the more people actually see you execute on the advice that they're giving, which is a form of currency for many, right? And they see returns on that currency that they've put in you, then they're more likely to advocate and actually give you real money from that. The other thing I was going to mention and ask really is for folks that are getting started, one thing that I've leveraged for myself has been pulling in my 9 to 5 work experience, because even though when I started Okwera, for example, I hadn't done anything like Okwera where I was the founder and the initiator, but I did very similar work at BFN. So pulling that experience from your 9 to 5, is that something that you would recommend as well?
For sure. There's so many things that I brought from my 9 to 5 into my entrepreneurial world. Even entering 2025, I said, okay, Jillisa, you are not where you started anymore. Now you're here. And so that means you need to operate in a different way. The same way that I was diligently working for the man, it's the same way that I need to be diligently working for my business. When I set a task to be done on this day, it doesn't matter if I don't feel like it. It doesn't matter if I'm feeling sick. In the same way that I couldn't call in sick to work is the same way that I need to not call in sick for myself.
Form of discipline, eh?
Yeah, creating excuses for myself. I think that's the best way to put things forward. Another thing that I wanted to add to that and putting yourself out there is not just asking for a whole bunch of things. It's also, what value can I provide for you? How can I help you solve your problem? I think that really, it really spices up a business relationship for sure.
Absolutely. Because a lot of times the people that we're looking to get these resources and advice from, they're used to people taking from them. They're used to people coming to them and asking for help. But if you come and offer something unique and say, you know what, I'm not really asking for any help. I'm here to offer you some help. What can I take off your plate? What introduction can I facilitate for you? That's how you build relationships. I wanted to ask though, on the other side, because you've sat on some grant committees, what are some common pitfalls that you've seen entrepreneurs, nonprofits fall into when applying for an application? Like, what's the one thing that when you're reviewing a grant application, you just immediately just put it aside and say, this isn't all?
I think you can definitely tell when somebody puts their time and effort into the application. And I don't want to tear down people for using ChatGPT, but let's be real. A lot of us are using ChatGPT, especially to help with grants, which is a great thing. But I don't think that we should be relying 100% on ChatGPT or any other AI to create our projects for us. I think that there's still a lot of our individuality that needs to go into the process.
Absolutely.
To make it feel real and authentic. So I definitely would say, ensure that you are being authentic, because I think that's one thing that's clear. Another pitfall is, aside from maybe not putting too much effort or detail into the budget, it could be, maybe trying to squeeze yourself into a grant that's not aligned for you. Sometimes we see, oh yes, they're giving $50,000. Let me just go out there and get it, without truly understanding what their ask is. We might just squeeze our business into a grant that doesn't fit, and it's really clear that you're just squeezing a circle into a square hole. So just ensuring that, and really understanding, not every dollar needs to be chased.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, just ensuring right off from the top that the grant you're applying for is actually aligned with your business.
Yeah, because I think sometimes we do like a volumes game. We think if we apply to 10 grants, at least one will come back to us, but it's just so overwhelming applying to 10 of them if 5 of them are not really aligned with what you're doing anyway. And if you do get that grant, the work begins now. You have to deliver on something that you're not really passionate about in the first
Right.
place. It's not even aligned with the work that you're doing. Thank you for emphasizing that because I've done it before.
So have I, honestly.
Yeah.
I have also, because you're right. You're thinking, okay, it's the law of averages. If I keep applying, it'll be better. But a lot of times it takes you away from applying for the ones that you are actually aligned with.
Precisely. So let's talk about investment readiness. Because on one hand, it's one thing to go out there looking for grants and sourcing grants, but how do you assess that you're ready if that opportunity comes to you? How do you make sure you're ready to even start sourcing for grants in the first place?
You know, I definitely would assess the stage of business that you're at. Really understanding, do I need funding or is it just time for me to pull up my bootstraps? Bootstrapping is something we don't talk about very often, but it is very beneficial because it gives you an opportunity to create productive ways to generate revenue in your business, which is super important, especially if you're getting grants. Just because you're getting grants doesn't mean that you need to not make money in your business another way.
Absolutely.
At some point, the grant cycle is going to end and your money's going to stop. If you do not bootstrap at some point or figure out how to generate revenue in your business, chances are when the funding stops, your business also stops or slows down extremely. And so definitely I would say, you know, really assess the stage of business that you're at. Am I at a point in my business where I can use an extra couple of hands? Do I need money for, let's say, materials or equipment to create whatever it is that I'm looking to make and sell? Really assess what are the specific ways I'm going to be using funding in my business. I'll also say that investment readiness doesn't always or particularly just stick with grants. Investment readiness really looks at, is my business ready for investment? So let's say I'm running a business that is going to scale to a very large scale where I need to make 1,000 or 2,000, a million units. And because of that, I need to apply for a loan or I need to get an equity investment for my business. There are some businesses that might be at a stage where I have a restaurant that's just running out of my house. And now I want to be able to actually have a brick and mortar restaurant that's going to require renovations or going to require a purchase or for me to have a lease to put our tables and chairs and stoves and everything. In that way, we're really looking at a different type of investment readiness to say, what are my finances looking like? Do I have the ability to get a loan or an equity investment for my business? Do I have the income available for me to pay this back in the case where my business doesn't grow as fast as I need it to? Do I have the right legal compliances in place? Do I actually have my business plan or my pitch in place? Do I have the evaluation piece that we talked about before? And so again, really assessing where you're the stage of business that you're at and truly understanding what types of funding can support me at this stage of business. Actually, through Funding Impact, we also have a course available called Defining Your Funding Strategy that helps you go through our workbook and course and assess, okay, am I early stage in my business? Do I need to be looking at grants, crowdfunding, loans, equity, and really assess and create your next steps?
That is beautiful. And I think that's so important because there's certain forms of funding that are glamorized. I think of like equity funding because everyone wants to say we've raised $10 million of Series A, but is it really necessary for your business? But one other point that you bring up is around revenue generating, which I think is easier and it's a given for for-profit businesses. That's essentially how you're sustaining yourself. But for nonprofit businesses, I find that it can be a bit sticky. So are you able to share a little bit more of ways that you've seen nonprofits generate their own revenue to encourage sustainability? Because one of the conversations that I've heard come up a lot is even funders are being reluctant to then fund nonprofit businesses because it's money in, money out, right? So the sustainability piece can be sticky there.
Yeah, you know, I think I see a lot of nonprofits generating revenue through subscription-based models. So like your membership, your community membership, or by providing workshops for the community at a cost. As long as the profit that is coming out of the membership dues or the workshop costs or the community events, as long as that's just being recycled back into the ways that you're creating impact, that's also okay.
Business. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, now as we're coming towards the end, what 4 top pieces of advice you'd give to entrepreneurs that are applying for funding, but also just general entrepreneurship advice, given that you've been doing this for a while as well, and you've created a space for so many women through House of Nine who are building their own ventures?
Okay, top 4 pieces of advice. The first one that comes to my mind is you do not have to do it alone. Even though many of us start our businesses and might be the only staff or the only person actively working in your business, there's still plenty of opportunities to create community. And there's so many communities. There's the Funding Impact community. There's the Okwera community, the BFN community. Find a community that works for you, where you can come together with other entrepreneurs and just have conversations.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the biggest thing that really brings entrepreneurs' spirit down, is the sense of feeling like, man, I'm all alone in this. Nobody gets me. But really having conversations with other entrepreneurs gives you the opportunity to connect, share ideas, and have each other say, okay, I actually like that idea. Have you thought of ABC? So building community is definitely a huge one. I'd also say take yourself serious. Take yourself serious as a leader in the work that you're doing. I think that we should all be thriving to be the best. Maybe not the best to others, but the best to ourselves. So I think taking yourself serious as a leader, as an entrepreneur in whatever field or sector or work that you're doing, I think helps other people take you serious also.
As well. Absolutely.
It's really like how you present yourself is how others are going to receive you. So always presenting yourself in that manner where you really are taking your business serious.
Absolutely.
But I think that's going to have to start with a mindset. What is your money mindset? What is your personal mindset? And truly understanding how that is the driving force to whatever it is that you're looking to achieve.
Absolutely.
Another piece of advice I would say is create structure. When you're working on your own or even in a small team, it's easy to just do what's easiest. And so even one thing that I'm working on is ensuring that I have structure in place to say, okay, we need bylaws, for example, or I need to make sure that I have someone looking at my finance and can help me understand my numbers in a way that will really help my business flow. Creating structure really helps you get things done and not continue to grow your to-do list. Creating structure in a way that any other business is structured definitely helps. Last piece of advice, reach out to Funding Impact.
Oh, yes.
Reach out to us at Funding Impact to help with figuring out how to get funding for your business. We really have a strong understanding of the Canadian funding landscape. We also have a great understanding of what's going on with funding in other countries around the world, because I've also sat on something called the National Partnership for Impact Investing, where I was representing Canada in a room full of many countries on the African continent and otherwise. And so we definitely have the experience required to provide you with support.
I recommend everyone reaches out, and if you drop the name Okwera, maybe you get a discount.
Hey, you never know.
I really like that. I especially like the structure piece, because I think as early stage founders and startups, we often hit the ground running. You're going with the flow, but you have to start from day one, creating those structures for your startups. And the other thing that comes to mind, because I've been listening, reading the Lean Startup, is also the point around operational efficiency, right? Operational excellence, really, because a lot of us have similar ideas. If you've identified one problem, chances are 5 other nonprofit leaders have identified the same problem and are thinking of the same solution. And so sometimes what sets you apart is how excellently you operate, how excellently you deliver the programming. So I think the structures help with that. And then also, like, you can't really take time off your business if you don't have any structures. You always have to be there. So I really, really appreciate that. But your last point around people reaching out to funding impact actually is a perfect segue to my next and last question. So 2 parts. One, what are 4 websites that you would drop for people to go and use for sourcing grants in addition to funding impact? And then the second one is, where can people find funding impact?
Okay, so places that I would search for grants would be, of course, funding impact, but also really looking at government websites.
Okay.
The government websites, whether you're looking at the Ontario website, if you're looking at Toronto website, even the Canadian government website, really great places to look for grants. I would say that one thing that I'm working towards in regards to advocacy is really helping the ecosystem figure out where the Canadian philanthropic dollars are. Because there are so many grants available in the US. There are so many different platforms where grants are available, like on a weekly basis. But if we look at those same companies who also have operations in Canada, there is no funding available. And I think that's a big problem that a lot of people in the philanthropic space in Canada are recognizing and sort of figuring out, okay, how do we get the philanthropic foundations to really see themselves as a big part of the solution? So yeah, definitely stay tuned to us as we continue to advocate for more grants available in Canada.
I do have a question on that one because you bring up such a great conversation. A lot of opportunities in the US, I find, more so than Canada, like you mentioned, philanthropic, Fox, etc. What do you think about unsolicited applications? Because sometimes organizations don't have any applications open. Can you unsolicitedly submit a proposal to them, or like a concept note or something like that, especially the philanthropies that have operations in the US but haven't really done anything in Canada or other parts of the world?
I'd say it would go back to that relationship building we spoke about.
Yeah.
Maybe sending in a proposal unsolicited might not get you where you need to be because you might not even be sending it to the right person. It might not hit the right eyes. But if I'm building a relationship and really discovering, okay, who here do I need to build with? As I'm building this relationship, we have the opportunity to build a partnership together. This partnership can evolve into, okay, yes, I remember you were saying you were trying to do XYZ. Well, I'm also looking to do that. What if we come together and you just, write me a $25,000 check and we can make it happen together? And so I would say that would be the best pathway to go down.
No, I agree. Like that. So this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for all the nuggets that you've dropped. Thank you for the work that you're doing first and foremost through funding impact and just curating all the resources, advocating for us to have more funding and funders available. I really appreciate that. But where can people find Funding Impact?
You can find Funding Impact at www.fundingimpact.ca. We are also on Instagram posting and sharing a lot of content.
Yes.
So find us on Instagram at Funding Impact. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn at Jillisa Brown.
Thank you, Jillisa, and thank you to our audience for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And a special thank you to Western Frontlines for sponsoring this episode. We really appreciate you for sponsoring this as part of the Race to an Inclusive Canada initiative. And until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm very, very curious to hear from you. So let me know, what did you like about the episode? What resonated for you? What was food for thought for you? And beyond anything, make sure you like, you subscribe, you share this with your friend, because the more people we can get this information and these resources and these stories to, the more we can reach, the more we can impact. Let us know, what other topics do you want to see on the channel? What other guests do you want to interact with through the channel? We hope to hear from you, and until next time, bye.